Chapter 61 Small Adjustments, Repetitions, Purpose, and Nihilism. A first disclaimer. All characters in this book are fictional. All claims, regardless of topic, are just that, claims. Some are rooted in empirical facts, while others are pure imagination. My aim is to strike a balance between vision and reality, between fiction and fact, in such a way that the audience can recognize themselves and build further on the multitude of ideas and inventions. The book has no ambition to proclaim an overarching goal, but instead questions accepted truths. In this way, in a Socratic manner, the rest is left to the audience. A millimeter of improvement day by day. We are in the middle of a training session and see a tiny improvement from one day to the next. It was incredibly difficult to get started. Arne Finn had passed the age of 70, and his muscles were no longer as elastic but rather stiff and aching. He had developed age-related diabetes, type 2 diabetes, along with the ugly variant of neuritis. It began in his feet and gradually crept upward along his calves. His feet felt numb and cold. Then it spread further, up to the knees and thighs. Supposedly there was no way back. It would continue and eventually take his legs for good. The heart becomes strained and ultimately unable to perform its task of pumping blood throughout the entire body, only two parts of it. Much ignorance surrounds this disease. But like many other illnesses, it begins imperceptibly and then grows at a millimeter's pace. Arne Finn had had type 2 diabetes for the past 20 to 40 years, that is, for most of his life. Eating and drinking gradually became troublesome, dizziness and discomfort were felt, and then one is told that everyone experiences a rise in blood sugar after consuming nutrition. But then there was the matter of insulin. Completely healthy people have cells that open themselves to insulin's beneficial and regulating effect, but if the insulin does not gain access, the blood sugar remains outside the cell and goes astray in the bloodstream, resulting in high blood sugar and significant discomfort. Arne Finn had read extensively about the problem. In addition, he was under the supervision of his general practitioner. Now the problems had become so severe that he was prescribed diabetes medication. Previously, he had been able to keep the disease in check through exercise, but he no longer had the strength for daily training. It felt compulsory. The diabetes monster liked the situation and snapped harder. It felt like having two crocodiles clamped onto his legs day and night. A kind of slow torment, being dragged slowly and surely downward. Could there be a way out? There were no ways out. But dragging himself back to some form of exercise might restrain the monsters. When the disease attacks millimeter by millimeter, countermeasures would have a millimeter-like effect. If not halt the negative development. Perhaps. But then there was the matter of motivation and initiative. What would it take to begin the countermeasures? Arne Finn was encouraged by healthcare personnel who visited him regularly at home, but he could not find the motivation. Then one day, one of the darkest days in December, he came up with an idea. What if he followed the sun's return from the winter solstice onward? He entered December 21st into a spreadsheet and created an Excel sheet. At 4:04 p.m. that day, the dark days would gradually begin to recede. Because of the Earth's angle of tilt relative to the sun, the days would lengthen by a few minutes each day. Arne Finn thought this was a good motivational tool, to follow the sunrise and sunset. The few extra minutes of daylight could provide a few extra minutes in some form of exercise. He chose a stationary exercise bike placed in the entrance hall. From experience, he knew that good resolutions are usually ruined by discontinuity. That is, one skips a day now and then. Eventually the entire resolution falls apart. Therefore, iron willpower had to be summoned, and the schedule had to be followed. Every day. The importance of the daily routine was absolutely central. He got started and had some good days with motivation at its peak, but then came other days when motivation was at its lowest. Still, he dragged himself onto the bicycle seat. The day's session was carefully recorded in the Excel sheet. Arne Finn was proud of the little he managed to accomplish. He was now in his 9th week and saw improvement on the millimeter scale. It was precisely this matter of small steps, whether in the progression of the disease or in the countermeasures. This repetitiveness was beneficial. However, other thoughts arose during his daily indoor cycling. The theme was nihilism. What is it? And why did this thought arise in the midst of a constructive period? Frightening.